The United Kingdom has threatened to withdraw officials and dignitaries from the upcoming Football World Cup in Russia. The threat comes amid claims that Moscow is behind the apparent poisoning of former Russian double agent in the United Kingdom. The Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said today that the United Kingdom will respond appropriately and robustly if the Russian state is found to have been involved. The statement came amid demands from lawmakers in the House of Commons for a tougher line against Russia. The Kremlin has said that it has no information about the mystery illness of Skripal and his daughter Yulia. Now, the Russian Foreign Ministry has dismissed Boris Johnson's comments, calling them wild.
I must say, I think that if things turn out to be as many members, I think, on both sides, I suspect that they are, to return to that formula, I think we will have to have a serious conversation about our engagement with Russia. And for my own part, I think it will be very difficult to see how we can, thinking ahead to the World Cup this July, this summer, I think it will be very difficult to imagine that UK representation at that event could go ahead in the normal way, and we would certainly have to consider that.
With me on the broadcast right now is WION's Bureau Chief in London, Mandy Clark, for more on that story. Mandy, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Any more details emerging on where Mr. Skripal and his daughter were directly preceding the point when they were discovered in the condition that they were?
Well, there's a little more we know about them. They were in a mall. There has been CCTV footage of them walking through this mall before the apparent poisoning. They seem to be fine. There is Zizzi's is a Italian food chain that has been closed down. So it appears that they were around this mall just shopping on a Sunday when at some point in time they were poisoned by a powerful poison that made them completely confused. And a witness had seen both of them sitting on the park bench. She thought that they had just taken an incredibly powerful drug because he was looking at his hands and she was passed out beside him, and that was before any help came. Now, they still haven't identified what poison they had taken, but many of those first responders, the ambulance services that arrived at the scene to help him and his daughter, have taken ill themselves. Now, many of they have, for what is called minor injuries. They didn't make it clear how they took ill, but a lot of them have been released, although one remains in hospital. So it's very clear whatever the poison was, it was incredibly powerful, and he still remains in critical condition along with his daughter.
All right, that sounds like a very powerful drug if it's had an impact even on those people who were there to help them after they were discovered. Mandy, if I can also ask you about Sergei Skripal himself. We're reading, of course, that he kept a very low profile in England during the years 2010 to now. Do we have more idea, though, of what exactly he was doing while in the United Kingdom and where his family was during this time?
Well, it's not exactly clear. In fact, what is coming out is a very sad portrait of his family life. His wife had died and his son was killed as well. There was cancer and a car accident. So there's questions around the death of his wife and his son, whether that was targeted killings as well. This is, of course, speculation. The reports were that his wife died at 59 of cancer and his son had a car accident, but of course with this recent attack it just puts that more into speculation. He did go to the police recently, that has been reported, saying he was in fear of his life, which seems that he had some indication that he might be targeted, although those reports don't say exactly who he thinks was going to attack him and what the police could provide. But there's a sense, certainly in the UK, that more needed to be done to protect former Russian nationals who've come for protection in the UK. Looking back, the death of Alexander Litvinenko, who was a former Russian spy, his widow has come out and really criticized the British government for not doing enough to protect him and not doing enough to protect this spy as well.
All right, and of course, connections already being drawn between Mr. Litvinenko's case and this one. Questions also arising on the role of Russia. We leave it at that. Mandy Clark, thanks very much for joining us this evening and bringing us up to speed on those developments. But for viewers who are just joining us, to give you more of an idea of what Mandy and I were talking about, it was when two people were found unconscious outside a shopping complex in Salisbury in the United Kingdom. Little did anyone know that one of them would turn out to be a former Russian spy who was convicted of working for British intelligence. Now, was this former spy who was seeking asylum in Britain after a high-level swap a few years ago poisoned?